I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power 365 show, where I interview staff at Microsoft across the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 technology stack. I hope you'll find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. Okay, today's guest is from Washington in the US. She's a principal product manager at Microsoft. She's passionate about delivering products and experiences that customers love. You can find out links to her bio and socials, etc. in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Kavishi.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you join us today. I always like to get a bit of background on my guests when they come on the show. So let's talk about everything that's not Microsoft related. Food, family, fun. What do they mean to you? And what does your life look like outside of Microsoft?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I definitely enjoy having a good work-life balance. My family is in India. I'm based out of Delhi, and I moved to US a few years back. And now I'm here in Seattle, which I love. It's a great city, especially if you like outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So I especially enjoy kayaking, hiking from time to time. And I think Seattle has a good food scene as well. I particularly enjoy Thai food and Asian food. So I think Seattle has a lot of that to offer.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I think if I'm not working and interacting with great customers, I'm usually just, enjoying some downtime with my friends, catching up on some TV shows or exploring restaurants and places around town.
So good. And I've got to agree with you about Seattle. I've done multiple food tours in the times I've been in Seattle. I love the foodie scene there. And of course, it is a massive outdoor type location and part of the world. Tell me about your journey into technology, first of all, before you then went to Microsoft. What made you decide to take a career in software?
Yeah, so before I even came to US and started working in Microsoft, I did my computer science engineering back in India. And as a child, I think I was always curious about technology. I always liked science and, I was always fascinated by technology. So I studied computer science engineering and I started my first job in SAP, again, a very well-known tech company, but as a software developer. And as I grew in that career path, I realized that I like to be involved in the business side of the product as well. I love working with customers, thinking about a business problem and owning it end to end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I decided to pursue master's in business administration. So I came to US, I did my MBA in Carnegie Mellon.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just came to Microsoft 4 years back in PowerApps and have been in PowerApps since. And I thoroughly enjoy this side of the house. And I think working in PowerApps and in the technology space is pretty great.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, a lot of interesting problems to work on and a lot of great people to work with.
It must be fun working with a technology that has a lot of runway. There's a lot of opportunity for it to expand and grow.
Yeah.
It's kind of still really in only its infancy, and therefore there's so much opportunity.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're just getting started. I think there is so much that low-code platforms can do, right? Like everybody in the world can benefit from the low-code platform, right? Really, the opportunity is huge. So yeah, it's definitely a very exciting space.
I was reading an article the other day, and it was talking about, and I forget who the author of the article was. It's remiss of me if I remember. I'll put it in the show notes. But he said back in I think 2011 that software companies were eating the world, and basically that software, all the money would move to software companies in time. Because they were innovative, you could create anything from software, and therefore, but his most recent article has been low code is eating software, and that the future will be more and more applications that can be built using low code to no code, just because there's so many applications that need to be built. And of course, the area of those application builds won't necessarily be with a big corporate company like, what we have now, but the tools provided by those big corporate companies would, of course, allow every business to start software development teams within them using low-code platforms like we have with the Power Platform and build out solutions for them. So that's exciting. Now, your specialty area is low-code, no-code, but particularly pay-as-you-go. Tell me, in your words, what is pay-as-you-go? How did it come about? And what were the issues that you're trying to address when you introduced pay-as-you-go?
Yeah, pay-as-you-go is a really interesting space. So basically, it's just a new way, a transformative way to pay for Power Apps and related Power Platform products. So pay-as-you-go is basically a disruption in how you think about the SaaS products, right? It's really moving you from a user-based subscription model to a usage-based billing model where you pay for what you use. You don't have any upfront cost. You don't need to spend any time negotiating with your license procurement team. You don't have to spend any time doing the lengthy setup, doing the calculations around how much licensing do I need, how do I procure that budget. So you don't have to go through any of those processes. There is no upfront cost or commitment. You just start using Power Apps, and then you pay for the actual usage of the Power Apps in a post-paid fashion using Azure subscription. So this just changes the way you think about getting started with premium capabilities. Today, as we know from our customers, one of the biggest pain points, one of the biggest challenges to get started, right? Like justifying the cost of paying for the premium licenses. So pay-as-you-go really helps you get started without any of those hassles. You can just think about a business problem that you want to solve. You can start using Power Apps, and then you pay based on what you used. And after you have established the usage patterns month over month, and if you think now is the right time for you to go in a big way and buy per user or per app licenses, great, based on the actual predicted demand, you can make a much more informed decision. Or there are certain cases, again, which is another of the challenges that we're solving with this, is the use cases where you have very occasional or seasonal demand or unpredictable demand. For example, an HR app or an expense app that is shared with the entire organization, right? Everybody, for example, in Microsoft needs to use this app, but I'll only use that app once or twice a year. I'm not going to use it every month. But licensing the entire organization in advance for an app that will be used occasionally or during a particular season only, or once or twice a year, does not make sense. And that just discourages you from then using Power Platforms for those needs. But with pay-as-you-go, you don't have to worry about licensing, about procurement. You simply share the app with everybody, and just based on the usage of that app, you just pay post-paid using Azure subscription. So it really enables everybody to use Power Apps Premium.
I like it. I love the opportunities that it opens for customers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we are getting some good feedback from customers who've used it. So really excited for more and more customers to adopt it and see how it works out in their organizations.
Awesome. It totally makes sense. But what I'm keen to understand, when I first heard about pay-as-you-go, I thought, oh, this is like for dev and test where you're only going to use it for a certain period of time. Makes sense to use it over there. But the more I've thought about it, where you have industries that are seasonal and they have a peak, activity. Let's say it was a tourism industry. They have a peak time in summer where lots of activity and staff would use apps. And then the rest of the year, there's nothing. I have a brother that has a business, and in 3 months of the year, he makes all his income for the entire year because it's in hospitality, it is in the tourism kind of sector. So is that the primary use case for businesses that have a few months of a lot of activity, and then the rest of the year they don't? So they don't want to own licenses for the whole year where nothing is happening and nobody is going to be using the apps in that period of time.
That's right, Mark. Definitely seasonal apps and occasional apps is one of the top use cases. There are scenarios such as HR apps, right? Expense app, for example. Entire organization needs access to an app. right? But you'll only be using that app once or twice a year, and it doesn't make sense for customers to purchase licenses for the entire organization for such apps which need to be used once or twice. Over the last 2 years during COVID, we also found a surge of such apps such as the COVID check-in app, or just return to work app. Again, it will be used by employees once or twice, but again, the entire organization needs access to an app. So there are certain apps that are just seasonal or occasional, which requires broad access, but the usage is going to be limited. So pay-as-you-go beautifully enables those scenarios. But also we enabled pay-as-you-go and rolled it out to enable frictionless way of getting started with Power Platform. Today, if somebody wants to use the premium capabilities, you need to procure licenses first for your users to get started. And as we know that procuring licenses in itself is a multi-month long process, it usually becomes the bottleneck, right? So we want to provide a frictionless way for customers to get started with PowerApps premium capability, use it for a few months, establish the usage patterns, and then based on those usage patterns, have a business justification to procure licenses. And then the conversation becomes pretty easy. So again, in order to enable, of course, so pay-as-you-go enables those occasional and seasonal app scenarios, as well as it provides you a frictionless way to get started with Power Platform.
Nice. So under the current model with PowerApps, you have you have a per user or per app license, right? And this is a third way of procuring licensing. Now, one of the things that you get under the old or the other two purchase methods is you get a certain amount of storage in the common data. Sorry, look at that. I used an old term, common data service. in the Dataverse, right? You get a certain amount, a gig of storage as part of that. How do you handle storage then under this type of scenario for the environment?
Yeah. So let's look at behind the scenes working of PowerApps Pay-as-you-go. So as soon as somebody enables PowerApps Pay-as-you-go, we enable 2 meters for you on your environment. So basically Pay-as-you-go works at an environment level. Right. And as soon as you opt into Pay-as-you-go, we enable PowerApps per app meter and a Dataverse Pay-go meter for you. And with Pay-as-you-go, you get 2 GB of Dataverse capacity free in your environment each month. Right. Beyond that, you will have to pay for the overages. Again, the good part about Pay-as-you-go is you get 2 GB Dataverse capacity free. And as your data needs grow, as your data needs scale, you can easily use Pay-as-you-go and pay again for what you use. Similarly, you get some Power Platform requests free with the pay-as-you-go meter. And again, as you go beyond those limits, you again just pay for what you use.
So the other thing, you talked about limits there, and APIs is another important component here. How do you handle, is there enough built-in API requests that meet the customer's needs, or is there potential for overage in that as well?
Yeah, so basically, as you know, last year we announced a massive increase in the Power Platform request limits across our licenses. So we do believe that our limits today, they should suffice for majority of the customer scenarios and nobody should need to go over. But let's say in exceptional cases where your API limits needs are beyond what we provide, then we have a very marginal cost of per request per day that you pay for. The good thing about pay-as-you-go environment is there's no throttling, right? Our limits are good enough to make sure that most of the scenarios are covered, but in cases you do go beyond, you're not throttled, your experience is not limited, you can still go beyond in those exceptional cases and you just pay for again what you use.
I like it. So it really does allow for that elastic scale when it's most needed.
Yes, exactly. And if people are interested in understanding the pricing, then on the PowerApps pricing page, all of these details are listed.
Is there a calculator available on, if you like, a flow diagram or a procedure around what's the best license for me? Now there's 3 options, but I always find that there's really 4 options because we've also got to consider Power Pages, because often, like if you look at the COVID app situation, there was often, in the projects I was associated with, there was often also a portal component, right, where you have the public engaging in with the health agency or government agency in that respect. So do you see this type of thing being part of Power Pages, formerly PowerApps Portal, in time?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So right now, even with the PowerApps pay-as-you-go meter, you get access to one app or one portal, but this is for just internal authenticated portal. But in future, we do expect pay-as-you-go to roll out for other Power products as well, including Power Pages. We don't have a date or roadmap for it yet, but this is something that we are very much thinking about. And to your previous question about, how does somebody decide? So basically, if I have to explain the three plans. So PowerApps today has a per app plan. So per app plan is suitable for users who are running an app or two in an environment, right? Per app provides you access to one app per user per month. So it's great for when you have one or two apps used by users in an environment context, right? And that's where it makes most economic sense as well. Per user plan today is for scale adoption. It's mainly useful when users are accessing multiple apps across environments, right? So with per user license, you can use as many apps as you want across environments at a fixed rate per month. Pay as you go provides you the best of both the worlds. So it's the flexibility where you are still paying for per app per user per month, but you're only paying for the number of active users. So basically, it's possible that your app in an environment has access to 100 users, but if only 10 users end up using an app in a month, then you're only paying for those 10 users. So it is great in scenarios where the users who are using the app per month changes, right? In this month, you think that only 5 users will use an app. In the next month, you think that 20 users will use the app. So when the demand is unpredictable, pay-as-you-go is great because then you're not licensing all the users and you're only paying for what you use. Also, in cases where the users who will be using the app, they are different. Even if 5 users are using every month, it's possible that those 5 users that are using are different users. Again, pay-as-you-go is great because you're only paying for the units used. You're not paying for which user used the app. So again, pay-as-you-go is great when you have unpredictable demand, seasonal or occasional use cases, or when you are just starting out with Power Apps and you want to establish the usage patterns before you decide how many licenses, be it per app or per user, do I even need to buy, right? So to establish that usage pattern, we would recommend using pay-as-you-go.
So you've used the term a few times at the environment level. So I'm taking if we want a mix and match scenario where we might use all 3 license types, we can do it at a tenant level, but the different license types would apply specifically to at an environment level. Is that correct?
Partially, yes and no.
Okay.
So basically, So basically, you're correct in the sense that at an environment level, you cannot use per app licenses for some apps and pay as you go for some apps. So basically what you do, how this works is you have an environment and you go connect that environment with an Azure subscription. So pay as you go basically allows you to pay via Azure subscription in a post-paid fashion, right? So you connect your environment to an Azure subscription. So all the apps within that environment are now charged against that Azure subscription. Even if you have per app licenses available at the environment, those are not used. However, if you have per user licenses already, let's say I'm a user who's using an app in a pay-as-you-go environment, and I already have a per user license, then I'm not charged because I already have a per user license. So I'm not charged again with the Azure subscription. So I'm excluded. So basically you can have both per user licenses and pay-as-you-go exist simultaneously in an environment, but you cannot use per app licenses and pay-as-you-go mix and match in a single environment.
Okay, that's a very important clarification. I like it. When we talk about billing cycles, is a billing cycle from when you sign up with that as a subscription, as in for this particular workload, or is it on a calendar month?
Yeah,
so like when's your rollover for that, because you're obviously the true up happens at the end of the cycle. It's not actually a true up. You get charged after the end of the period, right?
Yeah, Mark, I'll have to check on that. I think it's calendar year, but I'm forgetting.
Okay. That's all right. In fact,
Yeah.
if you just want to flick that to me, and we'll put it in the show notes or reference a doc article,
Yeah.
and then we can clarify that point.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
I
it's
tell-
based on the Azure subscription cycle, but I'll check exactly. I think it's monthly,
Yeah.
not based on when you started, but I'll check and get back to you.
Yeah, I just noticed with a lot of my subscriptions, it's often the renewal date of the subscription, and this is more in M365, is of, if I signed up on the 10th of the month, my renewal is the 10th of next month. But it'd just be interesting to see with this, whether it runs to a calendar month or whether it runs to from whatever day I made my first purchase.
Yeah, I think it's the calendar month, but let me check and get back to you. I'm forgetting.
That's all good. That's all good. So what else do people need to know about pay-as-you-go?
So pay as you go again, right? Like we discussed a lot about pay as you go, about the scenarios. One thing you should know that pay as you go is extremely easy to use, extremely easy to set up. There is no upfront cost or no commitment required. You can set it up anytime, you can disable it anytime. So I would recommend everybody to give it a try. All you need is an active Azure subscription from within the PowerApps experience or Power Platform Admin Center. You can, in a couple of steps, just connect your environment to an Azure subscription. And just like that, in a couple of steps, your environment becomes a pay-as-you-go environment. And again, there are no upfront costs, no commitments, so you can cancel the subscription anytime. You can disconnect your environment anytime, and you won't be charged any further.
I like it. Is there any other resources that you feel people should go and read to upskill in this area?
Yes, so we have a very extensive, very detailed documentation available on the Microsoft Docs site. So you can just type in Power Apps Pay As You Go, and that documentation in very detail explains how these meters work, how are you charged, how do you set up Pay As You Go, how you disconnect Pay As You Go. So I highly recommend going through that documentation.
Awesome. We will make sure we put that all in the show notes. Kavishi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having me. This was great.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show from Microsoft, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. How will you create on the Power Platform today? Ciao.